I just thought it was interesting the way that Breervish kind of reshaped the argument from who's the best quarterback, who that's kind of what we've been talking about, like to which quarterback between Darnold, Lance, and I guess Brandon Allen can best keep the Niners afloat for the first, let's say, 4 to 6 weeks of the regular season if Brock Purdy is not ready to go September 10th against the Steelers.
I think, all right, you ready to get into this? Because I think I'm sensing another 2.5-hour conversation between you and me on this topic, because I think there's so many layers to it, as there is with the 49ers quarterback situation at all times. But the point you made about the guy being the best option to fill in and kind of hold the fort down until Purdy returns, I agree with it. I think it's becoming the most apparent thing to me of this offseason. And it's that the 49ers view Brock Purdy as their franchise quarterback. If he wasn't injured, Larry, I don't know if we would be having this many quarterback conversations. I'm assuming we will be, just because we're always talking about a third overall pick who they spent 3 first-round picks to acquire, not being the starter of the 49ers after 4 games. That's always going to be a topic of conversation because of what they invested. But it sounds like what he did in those 8 games, and I think everybody kind of knows this, so I'm not restating anything besides what Captain Obvious says, but it's made such an impression and an imprint on the 49ers as a football team, as an organization, that they view health as the only impediment between Brock Purdy and being the starter of this football team. I think that's the fairest statement to make about the quarterback situation right now. And with health being the only impediment, I think what Breer pointed out is that the 49ers may not look at Trey Lance as a long-term solution. And you've talked about it. So many other people have talked about it, right? You've been talking about it since last year when you talked about how you were predicting a Brock Purdy and Trey Lance quarterback competition in this offseason. So you've been predicting a situation where there might not be enough room to develop both quarterbacks. And it sounds like that's the situation that's kind of created itself, where the Niners look at Trey Lance, still see this optimum potential, but they can't leave the other guy on the bench to make this potential play itself out. And they also don't think that he is ready right now to give them a better or I don't know. Breer and other insiders seem to speculate that the 49ers believe he's not ready, as ready as other quarterbacks who have played more right now to give him the best chance to win. It was always about what his improvement would be, which I think a lot of us expected. And he obviously didn't get to improve, unfortunately, when you get hurt, 40, 100 snaps into the year.
The only thing I would push back on the Breer front, Vish, is just that Breer's like the 49ers have given Trey a lot of chances. I don't know that I would necessarily describe it like that. It is, but that we are a great distance away from his draft class, but there's been injuries. They redshirted him a year. So I mean, there's been some interruptions there, but I just think that it's becoming more apparent to me the more I read these quotes is that the 49ers look at Trey Lance and see a quarterback, and I don't know exactly what they see, because I don't think they're really going to be totally transparent with the public about exactly how they feel about the player. But I think it's safe to say that the facts of his situation, which are that he played 1 year of real football since high school, has gotten to the point where it's almost as if they feel that if they gave him the starting job this year, even for 4 to 6 weeks at the beginning of the year, that because of his lack of experience, that he would make mistakes that would lead to losses, and they're not willing to do that for Trey's growth this year. And so that's why Darnold and Allen are ahead of Lance in their minds, because they know that there'll be a learning curve and they don't want to go through the learning curve in the midst of a competitive situation. So unless he just wows them against the Raiders in the practices leading into the preseason game, or unless he just wows them and shows unbelievable superiority to Allen and Darnold in the preseason, I get the sense that Trey's in his own category, that he's literally like, there's Brock who's in his own category, and then there's Darnold and maybe even Allen in the category of who's going to be the guy who can play for 4 to 6 weeks behind Brock if Brock's not ready. And then there's Trey in a third category where he's viewed as a developmental long-term project. And the guess is, and your guess is as good as mine, how long will they go that? How long will they go with that project on their active roster before they pivot and say, it didn't work?
Yeah, that's one way to put it. I think what we are realizing ultimately is, and I think that this statement, Larry, and this is a little bit away from what you just described, but there is a rhyme and reason for why I'm bringing it up, is I think it's also important to establish that I don't know if there's necessarily a mistake, because he also got hurt, which, is one of the biggest reasons why this development is where it is. And it's kind of at a point where nobody really knows where it is, because we never got to really see that plan play out because he got hurt. But he's not where they expected him to be after 3 years, right? If he was, I don't know if he would be stuck in this weird situation where he's in a quarterback competition. And Albert Breer, I thought, described it the best. He's in this weird situation where they're finding it difficult to put him on the field, but they know that the thing that he needs is to be on the field, right? And it's such a weird situation to have a quarterback, because you know that there's certain growing pains that you have to go through, but you also know that you have to go through those growing pains with this quarterback in order to get what you get from the other side, right? You get to reap all the rewards of the possible rewards of this talent that he has. And I think that's where this situation is getting a little bit complicated. And, these were some of my concerns, by the way, not to pat myself on the back, though that's exactly what I'm doing. These were some of my concerns in regards to drafting Trey Lance, this timeline. This is why I said, do whatever you can to get Matthew Stafford that offseason, Larry. I said it over and over and over again. A veteran quarterback, that's what this team needed, going the young quarterback route. Didn't understand how the timelines work for these quarterbacks. Now, I wish I was a little bit more humble and I was capable of talking about this situation without taking a minute there to pat myself on the back, but I did do that. And so it's now become a very complicated situation for the 49ers because, Larry, I was of the mindset for the longest time this offseason. I said it with you as you and I stream almost every week on these Tuesday nights, that, hey, the best thing for the Niners this offseason was Trey plays great, because I don't know where Brock's injury is. But as I keep evolving and thinking about this situation, Larry, I don't know where the space is for Trey to now play great, if that makes sense. Like, I think Trey playing great also involves a certain amount of time that Trey needs to spend on the field and just understand what his skill set is relative to other NFL talent. I think that was what the goal of putting him on scout team was, that rookie of the year, his rookie year, where you can have him run a lot of different pass concepts, not just the ones within your system, right? The ones you're game planning for. And he gets to just go out there and play and naturally feel how his arm feels, what throws he can make against the defense, what he can't make, right? Jimmy Ward really complimented Brock Purdy after the Miami game. I always go back to this quote when he talked about how he did this with his time on scout team. And Fred Warner, of course, the year before said he pulled aside Trey Lance and forced him to make a few throws because they weren't getting the reps they needed, and he made strides in that area as well. So both players did, do that. And I think that they do need that year, Larry, and it's like this magical improvement that I'm saying needs to happen in an ideal situation for the 49ers. It's ideal. I don't know how that happens without him stepping on the field. So I've actually amended my entire outlook of this situation. I think now, especially knowing that the prognosis, the other reason I thought that was the prognosis with Purdy was up in the air at the time. Now that we know Purdy is reportedly exactly on track, Larry, the goal, the hope, the goal everybody should be looking for is that Brock Purdy comes back healthy. He looks like the player he was, and he just kind of resumes and removes the controversy out of this and looks like the starter. Because I think that's the most stable possible quarterback situation for the 49ers. And Larry, we were talking last week about what do the 49ers need at different positions to win the Super Bowl. And at quarterback, I keep coming back to one thing over anything else when I look at the 49ers this year. They got to be stable at the quarterback position. And I think their fastest, easiest, best outcome of stability is if Brock Purdy gets healthy. He's the same exact guy, and he just resumes being the starting quarterback, and he's the guy that they follow behind. Because I think if he comes back, he's not fully healthy, he's a little bit shaky, and now you get into a situation where you have to bench one to play the other and play this guy to play the other. You start getting, it's a risky business. It's bad things start to happen in that situation. So I know that was a lot, Larry, but for me, the name of the game is stability, and that starts with Brock Purdy coming back healthy and reasserting himself as the starting quarterback, which he proved to be over 8 games last season.